from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased joining me from the US, Andy Cwik. He's the co-founder and CEO of Hubub. Andy, the way I love to do it with all my guests is when I welcome them, I keep it to them to introduce themselves because, I believe, there is no other better way than someone to introduce themselves, right? So I keep the floor to you and, we're going to take the discussion from there. Just as a hint for the audience, we're going to discuss a lot of things related to tech, of course, AI, a little bit about, the startup ecosystem. And Andy is doing something also special aside as well. We're going to touch on it. So Andy, the floor is yours.
Bill, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So maybe I should describe myself first. How about that?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm co-founder and CEO of Hubub. This is my third startup. My first startup was a data encryption company that crashed and burned. My second one was a telehealth company that had a fairly good exit about 2 years ago. And now the second one wasn't my idea. I joined as the founder, was a serial founder, started it, and I joined to help build the product and get traction and go to market and all that good stuff. This one is my idea. We're a SaaS platform that automates business client entertainment, which means that companies that entertain frequently, they're taking clients out to dinner or prospective clients out to dinner and ball games and concerts and all sorts of stuff like that frequently. We automate the whole process from recommendations to notifications, countering payment, ride share, populating your CRM tool and your expense report so you don't have to scan your receipts or go through your credit card statement at the end of the month. I'm on the leadership team for Idea Stage Accelerator called the Founders Institute in Chicago. It's international, but we have a Chicago chapter. I'm also on the local leadership team for Founders Network, which is a Silicon Valley-based full-time founder peer-to-peer network, 600 people, invite only. As well as I sit on the numerous advisory boards. And I dabble in venture capital, although that's more recent, mostly healthcare, but later stage companies can be agnostic. But that's probably only about 10 or 20% of my time. 80 to 90% of my time is on Hubub.
Cool. And thank you again, Andy. Founder Institute is a place also close to me because but not the Founder Institute. It's like their other arm, which is the VC lab. So I was very humbled to be on one of the cohort last year. Yeah. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, great.
Yeah, we can discuss this also maybe. Now, what I'm always curious, Andy, about, and maybe it's a traditional question, but I always wished that all the ideas that I had when I was younger, I, tried to implement them. So for you, the idea of Hubub, like, what was like the aha moment? Like, how did you find, that this space is untouched? There's a real problem there that need to be solved. I'm always curious about these stories.
It's been a long journey. So I first started thinking about the problem about 13 years ago. And the problem that I started thinking about was data silos, or is data silos, called by multiple apps. You remember about that time, about 13 years ago, is when we started having a proliferation of apps everywhere. And what I noticed was that the data silos made like the search and discovery less useful. So I'm one of those guys that likes to find new restaurants or new groups to join or stuff like that. And I realized, well, some of my data is in Uber, some of it's in Meetup, some of it's in Facebook, and the discovery wasn't as good. And also I had to juggle multiple apps to do things. And there's a good reason that data is not shared. People tend to not like it when they they're doing something on one app, and then another app seems to know about what they were doing, searching for in another app, and starts presenting them with ads. Or even worse, there's stories, and I've seen this myself. I'll be talking about something with somebody, and all of a sudden in one of my feeds, then all of a sudden I'm seeing ads that are somehow a little bit tangentially related to what we were talking about, leaving me with the impression that they're listening to me. So the problem is not just the data silos, and you can't just connect the data on the back end. You have to do it in a way that people are comfortable with it and their privacy is protected. If I do a search for something like in an online store, and then later on that online store shows me other examples or products or services related to that search, I'm fine with it. I know that how they got that data. It didn't happen, on the back end without my consent. So how do you figure that out? How do you get to that point where, essentially it's a super app akin to like what they have in China with WeChat, but China had a lot of help from the, government connections in China. WeChat had that help. And how do you do that in the US? So I went through several different iterations, and honestly didn't know what I was doing all that well. And at first I just created a super app. I didn't know anything about the lean and startup method. We were a parking app. Another point we were very consumer focused. And I think we finally hit the nail on the head with the way we're solving it. And I see the app, we're getting our initial traction with just business client entertainment, restaurants, bars, ticketing venues, and users that have a specific pain point, that being that they entertain frequently. So planning and execution takes a lot of their time. And then they have to worry about CRM updates and their expense reporting. So that's a pain point we can automate for them. And there's other businesses that have followed this kind of B2B to C path. And we see the app eventually growing into a more full-fledged consumer app, just because there's more consumers than there are business people, and then having not just restaurants, bars, and ticketing venues, but barber shops and dog walkers and massages and everything service industry related in a single place, and even ordering food and paying for it all in a single app.
That's really cool, Andy. I can relate, because back in the days when we wanted to plan something, it was really like, as you said, and as you describe it, it's like complex. I needed to, the thing that I think everyone who works like with, especially tech companies who does a lot of entertainment for their clients, you need to get all these, invoices, and then scan them and then put them into whatever expense application you use. So this by itself, like it was like really a big pain, and just consolidating this, I can relate a lot. Now,
that's whenever I pitch the idea to new employees, investors, whatever, that's when people start nodding along with me. When I get to the expense reporting part, nobody likes expense reports.
No.
It's like paying taxes. Nobody likes it.
No, especially after if you do like multiple of these back to back, and then you come back, during the weekend, this is the time that you try to find.
Right, and then you get kickbacks. We build the expense reporting guidelines into the app so that you're less likely to get a kickback because you exceeded your company's guidelines.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So and this is because there's a planning part. Now, you are dealing with B2B2C, which is, I'm hearing a lot. It's like where majority of the companies also, when they are trying to come up with new concepts, finding some, good traction there. Now, you're not a marketplace, of course, but at the same time, you act as a facilitator between like two parties. Now, for you, which one was the hardest to pitch? Was it like the providers, or was it the companies, or the employees who are gonna use the app?
So I think we are kind of a marketplace, but we're, and the unique thing about us is that we're able to pull supply from APIs. So we can use existing sources. With two-sided marketplaces usually have problems with you concentrate on the supply or the demand, and without the supply, you don't get the demand. Without the demand, you don't get the supply. We're able to have supply because we're pulling from APIs. As we get enough demand, we want to move away from the APIs and become a two-sided marketplace where we're charging brands a subscription fee to be on the platform. As far as the pitching goes, certainly the employees get it right away, but they're not the decision makers. You have to go to like an SVP of sales and stuff like that. And you have to sell it as a way to for them to close more deals. And I don't think it's difficult, but it took some time to figure out the right language and the right, the way to articulate the narrative. But those SVPs understand, that having more time for their personnel to service their clients, existing and new clients, because you remember you've got clients that have to renew, that they understand that, they understand the value proposition.
Right. Now, one thing, Andy, you emphasize a lot about, and I think not only, in your case, because with your mentorship, activities that you do. So you say like founders usually get stuck on the idea stage, but you emphasize that execution is more important than ideas. So, like if you want to give example from Hubub, for example, right? So how you can describe, a proper execution for an idea?
I've got a lot to say about, I've gone through that. I've got the war rooms. So I've got a lot to say about starting a company and ideation. I think at Founders Institute, where most people get stuck, most of our founders are probably at least 80, maybe even 90%. Are business people without technical backgrounds or technical skills, and they get stuck. Selling it to a technical co-founder, getting somebody to come on and help them build whatever it is, or to take a prototype further. And I think the key is you've got to be able to articulate. And we spend about half our time on this in the Founders Institute. You have to really be exceptionally good at articulating your idea. And I've heard Warren Buffett say, not just for entrepreneurs, but for everybody, the one thing you should invest in is your ability to articulate your ideas, both oral and written, and then also present them. There's a little art to. Once you're able to talk, you also have to know how to, stand and present and stuff like that. There's a whole art to that. But being able to have that 10-second pitch, that 1-minute pitch, that 3-minute, 5-minute pitch, and being able to articulate clearly and simply so that your grandmother could understand it, what it is you're solving, what problem you're solving, and how you're solving it. And then also your go-to-market strategy. A lot of founders, think if they build it, they'll feel the dreams notion that if they build it, they will come. And that's rarely true. You have to know where your customers are and how to find them and how to talk to them. And that's the go-to-market strategy. You have to have that in addition to the great solution to a significant problem.
Now, if I want to ask you about, regarding this point specifically, Andy, like, a lot of founders today, they started also to make it look more, I would say, attractive. Like put some words, AI, right?
Yeah.
Next frontier technology, something like this. But if you look at the idea itself, it's just a traditional idea. So now is AI kind of making a lot of noise here, and some founders are just trying to, ride the bandwagon, or are you seeing, and this again, I'm asking from your work at Founders Institute, right? So, or are you seeing like really, no, people are coming up with really real problems, I would say, that AI can be the right solution for that. So what are you seeing in that space?
So, it's nothing new. We saw this, when blockchain and crypto came about, everybody, whether it made sense or not, was talking about how they're using blockchain or machine learning. Same thing with machine learning before LLMs. Everybody would work machine learning and blockchain into a solution that a lot, 80% of the time didn't require those things. They were just, but some of it's not the founder's fault. Some of that's what VCs, the VCs look for those buzzwords sometimes. 50% of currently, almost 50% of VC dollars go to AI. So if you're a founder and you're trying to raise, you've got to work AI in somehow, even if it doesn't make sense. So some of it's not the founder's fault. But some of it's just bad advice or bad decisions. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. I think everything, in terms of the human computer interface aspect of it, the majority of new solutions have to work AI into it so that their users can interact through LLMs. Is that true AI? Is that really doing something with machine learning? Probably not, but it's got an element of AI or an AI enablement. And I think it's okay to talk about that. And if it makes sense, you should use it. Where the hardcore AI, developing or improving the training methods or the nuts and bolts of the models, those you rarely see people, in the startup world building those because they're extremely resource intensive. You have to generally speaking, you have to raise an enormous amount of money, which means you either have to be an exited founder or or something of that nature. And honestly, I don't think those are generally good businesses anyway, because I think it's a race to the bottom with the models. I think they're all pretty much, I think we're going to be sitting here 2 or 3 years from now, and all of the models are probably going to not have a whole lot of differentiation. And you can even see situations where people are using models like DeepSeek. There's some significant evidence that they use distillation to train the model using OpenAI. So you've got a situation where people are using models to train models. So I don't think there's a lot of differentiation. The differentiation is going to be the wrappers, the ChatGPT or what we're doing with Hubub or what OpenAI is trying to do with their shopping app. The wrappers, I think, are going to be the enable, where the value is and the benefit to the users. And also with coding too, I think. But again, the coding's just using, there's not a lot of differentiation there. So now, there's some areas I think are in the middle of that, particularly in supply chain and logistics, where people are able to use, they've been using machine learning all along, but it's like machine learning on steroids now. They're just able to look at more data. They're able to look at data maybe that's not even in digital form. Some of these supply chain, trucking companies and shipping companies are using paper, and now you can use the natural language processing capabilities of these AIs, which, so there's some new things you can do with that. And building something that operates in a vertical is, so you got the models, you got the wrappers, and you got these guys in the middle. They're probably there's probably a lot of value there. And if you're going to say, okay, is that true AI? I think that probably is. And that probably is. And there's probably genuine applications there. And you're probably really doing hardcore AI, but not the model where I think you're probably wasting your time, and not the wrapper level where it's kind of just cosmetic,
Mm-hmm.
So, but we'll know more like in a year or two. I mean, this stuff's evolving so fast.
It is indeed. I'm hearing a lot of people saying that LLMs are, being kind of becoming a commodity, and still the software part, which is like, so it's like as if the cloud, right? So the cloud, when people start to talk about the cloud, so cloud ended up to be just the infrastructure for SaaS companies to run on top of it.
Excellent example. Excellent example. There's very little differentiation between any of them, right?
Right. And LLMs are becoming, the commodity. We're not saying they're
Yeah.
not important, but I mean, like, yeah. So as of today, if I want to start a SaaS company, I go and choose between Amazon's AWS or Microsoft
Yeah.
Azure or Google
Whoever gives you the
GCP.
best deal.
Yeah. So probably, software is king. So everyone is saying like software stays the king. I have a theory that hardware is also king. I mean, these AI chips and what's happening in quantum. Uh, of
Yeah.
course.
I mean, I mean, the chips are like the standard, like what Microsoft had with the IBM standard, right? And if you've got the chips, then you've got the standard, and then you can charge pretty much whatever you want for it, right? That's what NVIDIA can do, right? You either use NVIDIA or NVIDIA.
Right.
If you wanted back in the 80s and 90s, you wanted to build software, you either wrote it on Microsoft or you wrote it on and made a lot of money, or you wrote it on OS2 or Apple and you made a lot less. So, and there was no cross-platform technology. You had to write it native. So,
Right. Right. How much are you using AI in the product today?
we're using it for software development a lot. It shaves a lot of time off of that. We're using it for brainstorming on the marketing and sales side. And I think that's just going to continue to grow. But initially, that's where we're dipping our toe in the water, and it's saving us a lot of time.
Anything you're using it for interaction with the, platform users, whether on business sites or...
That is to be built, but yes, they're right now. I'd say in next month we're going to have an LLM implemented, and the users will be, and there's going to be a redesign, and our users will have that option. They'll be able to either speak to our app in natural language or type a natural language prompt, and the app will it'll be the equivalent of having your own executive assistant.
Right. And then there's something which is related to startups and maybe even small businesses. So always we hear, that every startup, they need their moat, right? So they need that, unique differentiation. Now, I heard a discussion the other day where someone was saying, hey, like even if today a founder or founders, they come up with something new, probably someone would go and take that and give it to one of these, AI, code generator AI, like let's say Replit, Vercel, all the others. And, like the AI might come up with an MVP very fast also as well.
Yeah.
So, and for you as someone who founded, many companies and you exited also as well, and now with your mentorship, so really what is the moat now?
So defensibility is a key aspect that all founders should think about. There's a lot of businesses that it's probably not possible to have defensibility, and that's okay. It might be in a market that's not a winner take all market, like a bakery. It's not a winner take all market, or crypto. It's not a winner all take all market, and that's okay. It might not be VC venture backable. And so when I'm wearing my VC hat, I look at product, solution, team, go to market. But then if I don't get past defensibility, then I don't take a look at an investment, because you have to have defensibility. The best defensibility, and there's some good sources to look at on this. There's James Carrier over at what the heck is the name of it? Network Effects, NFX. They're fun. They've got a lot of white papers you can read on defensibility and marketplaces and stuff like that. And Ravi Mehta, who used to be the TripAdvisor product guy, and he has a blog. He's got a lot of good things to say about it if you want to Google him about defensibility. But the best defensibility, there's several. I mean, there's price, which most startups can't compete on price. There's unique supply, which you could say Airbnb had that unique supply. There's, discoverability. But the best one for startups is network effects. And I think we have network effects. Facebook has network effects because LinkedIn has network effects. You go where your friends are. Amazon has network effects. Now, if you were going to try and compete with Amazon, the logistics and supplies chain infrastructure is the capital. So the capital resources to compete with that are ginormous. So that's a network effect. So with us, there's a network effect because we have a rewards program so that you can use your Hubub points just like you can use your airline miles to take your family on vacation. Use your Hubub points to take your family out to dinner or a ball game. So that creates organic B2C growth. And then as more and more people are on the app, so, when you create an event with, people that you're going to, business clients, they also get an invite to join the app. When you take your Hubub points to take your family out, they get an invite to join the app, and you get this network effect. And network effects are by far the best way for a startup to compete if you have that. Now, if you don't have that, that's okay. But think of other ways of making your product more sticky and more, Apple Computer, for instance, they're no longer Apple Computer, they're just Apple Inc. But all of their service industry things from, music streaming to their storage infrastructure for storing your photos and your emails, to their fitness apps, all of their apps, they only work on their devices, right? And there's a reason for that. It makes it hard to switch to, a competing operating system, right? They create a switching cost,
Right.
by doing that. So, and for a long time, they ran that service industry at break even because they knew it was enabling them to sell more hardware. So, anything you can do to make your platform more sticky and increase switching costs away from your platform, is a great decision.
Right.
Yeah.
We touched on VCs a couple of times, Andy. How the VC industry is shifting, especially with the age of AI and large language models, and all the noise that also coming up there.
Well, I mean, VCs follow the herd, right? They're not any different than anybody else. And the smart ones kind of try not to follow the herd and look for Warren Buffett always says he's a cigarette butt investor. He's looking for the cigarette butt on the ground with an extra 2 puffs on it, So you kind of want to try and be conscious of not following the herd, but just like a lot of other things, VCs are guilty of following a herd, and they're looking for AI first, whether it makes sense or not. And so that's a big shift. I mean, like almost 50% of every dollar, VC dollar, goes to AI. I don't know that it's affecting the internal dynamics of VC firms that much yet. It probably will at some point. There's some that are more automated than others. Like if you listen to Jason Calacanis from he's on the All In podcast. He runs the Launch platform, and he does have a lot of automation. He talks to a ginormous amount of startups. His team does every week. They record it. Every interaction. They use a lot of machine learning and AI in the background. He's got a lot of tech, but he's probably at the pinnacle and probably the exception. Not a lot of them are using it yet, but I think it's probably coming where and it will enable VCs to look at far more deals than they could in the past. Using the really essentially manual processes they use now.
Right. I've seen this, by the way, and because I had the chance to interact with the Founder Institute team and the other arm, which is the VC lab. So they have developed in the Decile Hub, the product that they have. So I saw like really cool stuff like AI that can write deal memos. So the only few things, which is like kind of having the first call with the founders. Of course, a lot in the due diligence because there's a lot of moving parts. Like you need to go and do your job, right? So you cannot rely 100% still on AI. But what I have seen, yeah, it can save a lot of time, and this is might open room for getting more founders in front of
Yeah,
I'm talking especially about the small ones, maybe, right?
yeah, definitely. I mean, and some of the tedious aspects like deal memos, like you mentioned, that's probably a good place for automation. But yeah, they'll be able to just look at more and more deals, and hopefully, I mean, you have to be careful too, because if you rely too much on AIs, then you're going to get a homogeneous group of, homogeneous deal flow, because it has to look for, AIs can't act with purpose and intent. They have no understanding. They're just brilliant parrots. They mimic vision and they mimic human speech, human language. So whatever you tell it to look at, that's what it's going to look at. And if you tell it, to look at just AI, then you're just going to get a lot, or blockchain, you're going to get a lot of that, and you're going to miss things that are novel. So you have to be careful to not rely on it too much, right? And figure out a way to make sure that you're not missing those things where people have like a very insightful product that the AI is just not going to, I mean, they don't have any understanding, you know,
Yeah.
they don't understand nuance.
Right. So Andy, you are part of, the ecosystem in Chicago, and of course, as I was telling you before we started recording, so it's a kind of a global podcast. I'm very
Yeah.
grateful for this. So people, when we talk about startups hubs in the US, so the first thing comes in mind, of course, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, New York.
New York,
Yeah, probably a little bit like some, Boston, right? And
Boston
Denver.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Austin. Yeah.
Yeah. So anywhere where, there are like these, big universities, big names. But how is it like in Chicago? And, does it differ like from other places? And because, here I'm in Dubai, right? And something which when I interact with both founders and investors from the US, they come here, we find out, and they tell me like there are differences from place to place. And some of them, which are not in New York or San Francisco, they tell me about sometimes struggles they have.
Yeah.
Sometimes, they talk about like lack of community. How is it, there in Chicago? And,
Yeah.
so
So,
what's it seen like?
I mentioned my first startup crashed and burned years ago, and one of the reasons crashed and burned was there was just no infrastructure here. I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. My co-founder didn't either, so we didn't know what we were doing. There were no accelerators, and there were very few VCs, and you had to mail a deck to them. There was no. That's how old that was. Anyway, we had that in San Francisco. I'll say a couple of things about it. The pandemic, one of the things is it democratized VC somewhat. And so if you're building, there's two things. There's the virtual aspect now. If you're in Chicago and you're building something in transportation or food tech or med tech, there's a lot of, you probably won't have to go outside of Chicago. But if you're building something consumer, something social, something maybe even education, you're probably going to have to go for funding. You're going to want to integrate at least virtually with people on the coasts for funding, mentorship, and stuff like that. Now, there's also the in-person aspect of it. It can't all be virtual, and Chicago has exploded with in-person events, even in the last 2 years. But it's been exponential. From what it was even 5 or 10 years ago, but even last year, it's just exploded. I have to very pick and choose about what I'm going to do for in-person networking, but in-person networking is crucial for meeting funders and customers and potentially new employees, and there's a lot of that here. If you're in those certain areas, like I said, supply chain, transportation, food tech, med tech, there's a lot of you probably don't need to leave the city. But if you're in those other areas, you do, and the VC environment here is somewhat risk adverse, as opposed to like an Instagram would never, or WhatsApp, or Facebook would never get funded in Chicago. And even a Hubub, without a tremendous amount of my company, without a tremendous amount of traction, would not get funded here. Would not get there's no nobody writing check. Very few people writing checks on a paper napkin or a prototype. Whereas on the coast, you do see that. So,
Right.
but and there's some ebb and flow. We've got some great accelerators. We've got some great networking spaces. We've got 1871 TechNexus Workbox. We've got Techstars here for MedTech. But if you want the big top tier accelerators, you have to leave the city. You have to go to the coast for that. If you want a Y Combinator, etc., you have to leave the coast. And I don't know that Chicago would ever support that. And there's a I guess what I'm getting at, there's a different risk tolerance here, and it's much lower. There's a lot of studies that show, not a lot of studies. I've been made aware of some studies that show that the returns are better here for VC. But if you're taking lower risks, yeah, your returns are going to be better. But you're also you're not going to have unicorns, right? We had Cameo here, which is kind of, they had their moment and they didn't. They're no longer a unicorn. But even them, they went to the West Coast at some point to raise money and to raise their larger rounds, and their founding team operates on the West Coast now. They're not so much in the city anymore. So Chicago's not likely to produce unicorns because it's so risk adverse. And I don't think it's a lack of capital. I think it's just a different, more conservative mentality. And I don't know that it's going to change. I don't think it needs to change. I mean, the pandemic opened up access to a lot of that stuff on the coast. The coastal investors now realize they don't have to be able to be within bike riding distance of their investments.
Yeah, but yeah, which is fine. And even in Europe, like there are places, of course, like Europe always, people look at it as risk averse, but of course there are like countries which are like more, I would say, risk friendly than others. So for example, Sweden, where the infamous Spotify and
Sweden seems to have a lot of startups, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it looks with the attitude there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very much interested also to understand the reasons sometimes why some regions, sometimes cities, they would be more different than others. Yeah, but again, it's as you said, like it depends, and it doesn't have to change, as you said, because this is what makes a place like special, right? So
that's the beauty of the internet, and it's only getting better with like Starlink and stuff, right?
Yeah, so for example, just say, hey, like this place is gonna be the next Silicon Valley. I say, the first question, why it needs to be Silicon Valley?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, like it can be whatever in its own way, right? Of supporting founders and don't be. Yeah.
Another comment I'll make, I hear a lot of people in Chicago saying, yeah, we're more risk adverse, but it's easier to hire engineers here. They're less expensive. They're more loyal and stuff like that. Those days are really gone. The pandemic made remote work possible. Any of the psychological barriers that were there, or a lot of them, it did it with a lot of things, like from shopping to online banking to telehealth. But it also did it with remote work. The resistance that mid-level managers had, and I mean, you're seeing some clawback, but I think that's temporary. So I mean, I got two people here, and then I got people in Miami, I got people in Charlotte, I got people in Pittsburgh, I got a person in the UK, I got two contractors in Nigeria, or one in Nigeria and one in Nairobi. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because it's where my family is. It's not because when I post a job, I want the best person in the world. Now, sometimes I need somebody domestic because we're dealing with business intelligence data and stuff like that. And people don't like the idea of people outside the country being able to access it. So I mean, they got to be domestic. But still, I don't care that I'm not restricting myself to people in Chicago. So that kind of thinking, well, Chicago's great because the engineers are cheaper. It's silly.
Right.
It's silly.
Two things I still need to ask you, Andy. Because you exited, companies also as well.
Yeah.
The question that always I get it sometimes just out of curiosity because people they know I love to read about startups. I love to and the question that I didn't find a clear answer yet is when a founder they exit or they say, you know what, no, I need to double down on it. I've seen different examples. I've seen like sometimes where the founders probably they were excited to go big, but because they didn't get with the acquiring company,
Yeah.
they decide to go. Sometimes it's personal reasons, and sometimes people who didn't actually take that offer and they
Yeah.
said, no, I'm gonna grow, and they're gonna do it all by myself. They crashed. So with all this experience, what you can share on that, Andy?
I think it's a difficult decision. It's a heart-wrenching decision. It's hard these are your children. It's hard to part with them. It's hard to give it to somebody else and let them do whatever they want with it and, change the name and the colors and the culture and even the product mix. And you're not going to, so it's hard to give them up, usually. The other thing is that I think you have to look at, if you want to take it big, like public, which is rare to be able to take it public, is this just a single-use service or tool, or is this a platform? Is this an Apple computer or a Facebook or a Microsoft that's really a platform that other people, like Amazon? Amazon's really a platform. Are you able to have other people contribute now to and build it where it's more of a full-fledged platform, or is it just a single thing? And sometimes it could be a platform, but maybe it's defensibility is an issue. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, it was heart-wrenching decision for Facebook when they got a $1 billion offer, I think from, I don't think it was from Google, but Zuckerberg really struggled with whether or not to sell it or not for $1 billion. It would have been a fantastic exit. And he ended up sticking it out. And Facebook's really probably somewhat of a platform. He's trying to make it even more of a platform, but I think there's been some limits to that. But in terms of having other apps join it, he's made it kind of a quasi platform. But another example is Groupon. Groupon, I think you could say, is a platform company. It's similar, akin to Amazon, but they turned on a $6 billion offer from Google and went public, and their initial valuation when they went public was around 13 billion. So they looked like a good decision, but the problem was defensibility. There was no way to make the platform sticky. So then you got Living Social popping up and all these other competitors who just copied it. It was a race to the bottom, and the quality on the platform went down because now they're trying to flood the platform with supply to try to attract more and more users. And it was a spiral downward. And now it's worth I don't know, it's less than 10 million, I think. So you have to look at, are you a platform? Can you become that? And if you are a platform, is there defensibility? Is there a network effect? Groupon doesn't have a network effect. Facebook does. Apple has a network effect. Is there a network effect? And it doesn't have to be, it can be like, capital, a network effect created by capital resources, akin to, Ford Motor Company, or Tesla, or, Amazon. If you don't have those and you got a great offer, Elon Musk sold Zip2 and PayPal. Those don't have network effects. Well, I take that back. Zip2 doesn't. PayPal does have a network effect, But it's not, it's a commoditized thing. It's sending money. It's if PayPal starts taking too much of my money, then I'm going to go over to Square or somebody else, or, oh, their names are escaping me. There's a million of them now to transfer money, right? So it wasn't really defensible. So it was smart to sell that, to sell PayPal.
Right.
Yeah.
Because currently I'm reading this book, and we're talking a lot about the network effect, Andy. So VC people will know the power law, right? So, and I'm reading the book
Yeah.
currently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like, it looks, the founders, they have their own power law, which is, called network effect. So the thing is, if I stay, like, can I hook multiple services products so people, they don't leave me, right?
Yeah. Right.
And if I'm gonna stay like a niche product, maybe in a niche, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with this. I know I've met like some founders, both in the US and even here. They are very happy. They're doing like less than, I think, 10 million ARR, and they are very happy.
Right.
They're saying we serve these customers. We're not VC backed. We're happy with like very slow growth. It's like a personality, and they are taking it
It
more
fits
to
with, it fits with their personality, right? Yeah.
yeah, and it's like a what people call it, lifestyle business, right?
Right.
But I've seen the people who really, they want to make this big. They want everyone to be hooked with that, and say, like, you need to have the power to do this,
Right.
right?
Right. I mean, everybody's different. In the Founders Network, there's a guy named Adam Shire. He started Siri and sold it with a couple of co-founders, and sold it to Apple. And he's since done a couple of other startups. He's had like 4 home runs, and they've all been really big, multi-billion-dollar things. And he said, for him, the billion-dollar ideas are as much effort, time and effort as the small ones. So I go for the billion-dollar ones because it's just as much time and effort. So that's his philosophy, and I think that's my philosophy too.
Right.
To go for the billion-dollar ideas. But like you said, there's nothing wrong with solving a niche problem and serving those customers and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's your thing, do it.
Right.
But always think about, you don't want to be Groupon.
Yeah, no one wants to be grouping. Absolutely. Um, Something which when I was preparing, and when the team get in touch, so it was like a little bit unusual for me. So I know you're working currently on a documentary related to the US jail system, which is kind of a social project for you. What's the relation, what's the passion behind it, and how do you aim to influence this with what you currently do with tech entrepreneurs?
Oh, so I've had some interaction with the local jail here, Cook County Jail. And what I discovered was that shockingly, there's a couple of things. There's some people, at least in Cook County, and I'm sure Cook County is, it's one of the bigger city jails. I'm sure it's not unique. I'm sure it's in other jails and prison systems. There's 2 classes of people that were kind of shocking to me. There's one class where they're cognitively impaired. Perhaps they've got CP, or it might not be obvious, but they've got the intellect of a 7-year-old or maybe a teenager. And some of them have created or done horrific crimes, violent crimes, murders, rapes, and they're in this system where I don't really think they should be, because they don't, first of all, really can't participate in their own defense. They're cognitively impaired. If you talk to them, you'll realize it. And they're treated like they're normal. And many of them end up in prison for lengthy prison sentences. And they really should be, what happened generally is, not always, is their families just didn't have the capacity or decided not to look after them, and they were out, had free reign, and they got into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a second group of people that I've run across who are severely schizophrenic or bipolar. And again, have committed horrific crimes, And for one reason or another, they were off their meds. One guy I know, he was off his meds because of the pandemic. He's cognitively fine. He's very smart, but the pandemic came and he's not somebody who reads the news. He was in the habit that he would get a shot once a month and he was fine. He called up the clinic and they said, you're fine. You don't need to come. And this went on for a couple of months. And it was because of the pandemic and he didn't know why. And eventually he had a manic attack and he killed his 96-year-old grandmother with a pitchfork. And he ended up with essentially a life sentence. And other situations where, they've had manic attacks that, and they don't even remember committing a murder or something like that. And they really should get NGRI. And there's a couple of problems. You have to, the jury system in Illinois does not allow for the jury to be told that somebody who gets NGRI, which is not guilty by reason of insanity, that they will not just they won't see him at Dairy Queen the next day if they find him not guilty by reason of insanity. They'll go to a mental hospital for at least 10 years, maybe forever. The jury's not allowed to be told that. So you have to ask for a bench trial, and the judge knows that, but then you're at the mercy of the judge. So basically you don't have the benefit of the jury system and so a lot of these people are not being treated fairly. They shouldn't be out about in public, but I don't think they should be locked up in a state prison with hardcore murderers who are not mentally ill. I don't think that's fair. I think so. There's got to be some solution there. And then a lot of these people, there's the medications they have to take. They really dull their senses. They make them very lethargic, and so they don't like to take them. They end up sleeping all day. Not all of them, but some of them. And then there's also a situation where some of them, they're on their meds and they kind of just subconsciously stop taking their meds because they're fine. They're not having hallucinations. They're not having mania. And they don't make a conscious decision. This happens in a certain percentage. They don't make a conscious decision to stop taking their meds. They kind of just gradually stop taking them. And then they become manic. I don't know what the solution is. But I don't think the public knows that we're spending millions of dollars on these people, keeping them incarcerated, when they really should be quickly moved to a mental hospital and maybe kept there. I don't know what the solution is. The third aspect is, and I don't think this is well publicized, is it seems like the trigger for a certain percentage, it's probably a small percentage, but a certain percentage of this schizophrenia and bipolar disorder is triggered by psychoactive drugs, street drugs. A lot of these people are chronic users of marijuana and stuff like that. Now, there's millions of people who use marijuana and don't become psychotic, don't become mentally ill, but there's a percentage that do. And I'm not against legalization, but I'm saying we need to be a little bit aware of this in the age of legalization. And there's also instances, and I know a person personally who this happened to, people who don't use these drugs. They don't become permanently like schizophrenic or bipolar or anything like that, but they have a manic episode and have committed murders. But then they come back to normal and they're fine, but they really got to stay away from those drugs. That's not well publicized. People, there's a lot of people selling these drugs as, a wonderful solution to all their problems and the equivalent of, having a martini. And for most of those users there are, but there is a percentage where there is a risk that you could have a manic episode. There's psychoactive drugs. And if you use them chronically, you could develop, it's a small percentage, you could develop a severe mental illness. Now, very few people with these mental illnesses commit horrific crimes, but it is a possibility. So I'm working on a documentary on that. I'm interacting with a director and working on shopping around for, trying to find a documentarian and to help try. I think it's a good way to try and publicize the problem. I think the public should at least be aware of how tax dollars are being spent. And also it should be taken into consideration in the age of drug legalization.
Right. And this is like, it's something good for the society also as well. So to understand,
Yeah.
the thing behind the reason I asked you, because I have a daughter, she want to become a criminologist, because for the exact same reasons, she always like, she said like, we need to understand the background of these, and why we should put these people together or not. So this is why I was like a little bit biased to ask you this question. So probably after we finish the recording, I gotta go and tell her like, I had this fantastic discussion.
She wants to become a what? I missed the word.
A criminologist.
Criminologist. Okay, yeah. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she always tells me like, like that there is a reason people, sometimes do these. Like, they are not always like bad people. There might be some other things. And
Yeah. They just had a horrific set of circumstances, and had they known, I'm sure they would have made different choices. They wouldn't have become a chronic user of drugs or something like that. But everything in the society is like, well, it's not a really big deal. You can quit whenever you want.
Yeah.
It's habit forming, but it's not like a heroin addiction or something like that.
Yeah, so absolutely. Just before, like, I do my final closing. I always, when you were talking and you said about the pandemic and what happened, so this brought to my mind the movie The Joker, and how sometimes, you push people to go and do bad stuff also as well. And, I think us people who have the capability to do it, whether from money perspective, from any kind of support, not only money, like we should, part of our social, I would say, give back is to shed light on these things, so we have, a better world. So thank you for doing this, Andy.
Thank you.
Yeah. So final thing, where people can get in touch and learn more.
So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you search on my name, I think you'll see it right below me, Andy Cwik. You'll find me on LinkedIn, and I accept almost all connection requests. And then you can also find my company at hubub.me, HUBUB.me. We're not a .com, we're a .me.
Cool. I will make the life easy, so audience, they can find, both your LinkedIn profile and the company website in the show notes. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting app, if you're watching on YouTube, you will find in the description notes also as well. Andy, really, I enjoyed the discussion. Time flew very fast, and it was, for me, very informative, especially with the use case you're solving with Hubub. So looking forward to see how this will evolve in the future. And this is, for the audience, this is how I end my episode. So guys, if you just discovered us by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, subscribe, share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keep coming again and again, guys, I'm really grateful for you for all, the efforts that you did this year. By getting the podcast to new levels I even didn't expect. This is was a humble podcast for me. I'm just trying to do a small impact, but I discovered, just today, and for the sake of transparency, we're recording on 6th of May. So the podcast made it into 5 countries, top 200 podcasts under the entrepreneurship in different countries. Also, I received an email yesterday saying that the podcast was chosen to be one of the top 100 podcasts globally. So they choose us by the Millions podcast. So I'm going to put in the show notes as one of the best 100 tech startup podcasts. So thank you for that. And people are noticing us. And as I say always, I do all this to be able to give back a little bit back to the community. So thank you for the support. And as I say, always stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button. Share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.